Welcome back, my aspiring mathematicians. Let me share a secret with you. Did you know that graphing system of linear inequalities is not that hard? And did you also know that you can apply it when you are buying items for a store, or you may have a business running and you can use it in terms of your profit margin? Yes. A system of linear inequality is a set of two or more inequalities in one or two variables. You can have an x and y, and you will use the inequality symbol when you are writing a system of linear inequality. In order to find the solution of a system of linear inequalities, you have to graph those two linear inequalities just like you would graph a regular linear equation. I bet you also didn't know that there is a difference between graphing a system of linear equation and graphing a system of linear inequality. Based on the inequality symbol that is given to you in that set of inequalities, you have to either use a solid line or a dashed line, and you either have to use a shade above or shade below. Now, one thing I must say to you is that it is not hard, it is simple. And if you need some help on that, you can go back and watch my video on how to graph linear inequality. You can have a solution for a system of linear inequality, or you can have no solution. In the situation where you have a solution, it is usually found in the overlapping shading region of that system of linear inequalities. And what does that mean? That means you have to first graph each system of linear inequality as you would have if you were given linear equation to graph. So let's get into certain highlights that you need to know in order to graph system of linear inequalities. So the first thing I always say is that you can set up a table for your system of linear inequalities. You can write the boundary line here, and you can also set up one for your shading. And now you will have your inequality that you are going to write. So the first one is less than. You are going to use a dash line, and the dash line is going to look like this. And then for shading, you are going to shade below because it is less than or to the left. Now for the second one with greater than, you are going to also use a dash line, and you are going to shade above or to the right. I must say to you that you can use your elbow as a guide only if you are a right-handed individual. So if you are right-handed, your dominant hand is your right hand that you write with. Your elbow goes in this direction away from you, and this is your dominant hand, meaning it is greater than. Okay, so once it is your dominant hand, this is your greater than. It does not apply for someone who is left-handed. And so your less than would be this V, which you notice is shaped just like this one, your V right there. That will tell you that this is less than. So this is greater than, this is less than. You can use that as a way to remind yourself of what each of the inequality means and how you can shade also. Now the other inequality that we are going to look at is less than or equal to. It has half of the equal sign underneath it, and because it has half of the equal sign underneath it, you are going to use a solid line. So it's a solid line here, and the line is just straight, no dash. Okay, and because it is less than or equal to, meaning the upper part is less than, you are going to shade below or to the left. Fourth inequality that we will deal with is greater than or equal to. Because it is greater than, the V is going in that direction, and you have half of the equal sign underneath this. Because of the half of the equal sign, you are going to use a solid line. And a solid line is going to look like that. In terms of shading, because your V is going in that direction, meaning it is greater than, you are going to shade above or to the right. To the right, to the right, to the right. So those are the four main types of inequality symbol that you will see when you are given system of linear inequality to graph them. You must know this first before you start graphing. Let's start out with a system of linear inequality that I want to graph for you. The first inequality is negative 3x plus 6y is less than or equals to 12, and the next inequality is y is greater than 3x minus 3. You will notice here that the first inequality that is given to you is in the standard form. So you have to change it into the slope-intercept form. And if you don't remember how to change it into the y equals mx plus b form, you can go back and watch my video on how to do so. But let's get right into it, and we are going to change the first inequality into the slope-intercept form. We have our negative 3x plus 6y, which is less than or equals to 12, and we need to get the y by itself. So we are going to get rid of the 3x here and bring it over to the other side. Cancels out, so we have 6y is less than or equals to 3x plus 12. Now we need to get rid of the 6 that is in front of the y because it is multiplying onto the y, and we have to divide everything by 6. When we do so, we will notice that we will end up now with y is less than or equal to half x plus 2. So this is what the first inequality is now looking like. This is in the slope-intercept form. The only difference here, we're not dealing with an equation, we are dealing with an inequality. And we will rewrite the second inequality because now we are going to graph these two. The first thing we need to do is that we need to identify our slope, and our slope for this first one. So the slope is a half, and the slope for this one is going to be 3 or 3 over 1. Doesn't matter. Because the inequality symbol here is less than or equal to, we are going to use a boundary line that is going to be solid. So boundary line is solid. And we are also going to shade is less than, so we are going to shade below. So you shade below or you shade to the left. Now, because the inequality symbol here for the second inequality is greater than, when it is greater than and it doesn't have half of the equal sign underneath that, we are going to use a dashed line. So we are going to use a dashed line for this. And also, because it is greater than, you are going to shade above or to the right. So now we are going to graph this inequality. You are going to use the same format that you would have used if you were graphing a linear line. And you can go back and watch my video on how to graph a linear line if you need help on that. But let's assume that you know how to do that, and we will just continue with this lesson. So the slope here is a half, and the y-intercept or b is 2. So we are going to start at 2, which is right here, and the slope is a half. We're going to go up 1 over 2 is a positive slope, up 1 over 2, or we're going to go down 1 to the left 2. And we will continue in that format. Since the inequality symbol here have half of the equal sign underneath it, meaning it is less than or equal to, we are going to use a boundary line that is solid. We are not going to use a dashed line. It's going to be a boundary line. So this has to be a boundary line. And I will tell you, go to the end of the grid line when you are doing so. So you will apply your arrows there, and The inequality symbol is less than or equal to. So because it is less than or equal to, you are going to shade below. And we shade below like this. Anywhere in this area we shade below, go to the edge of the grid line. If you're using graph paper, go to the edge of your graph paper and you are shading below. And I would suggest for you to write your inequality inside that shaded region, so you know that that is the part that you, for this inequality that is given to you. So you will write y is less than or equal to a half x plus 2. Then the next thing that we have to do is that we have to graph the second inequality, and we are going to do it the same way as we did the first one. So we start at -3, which is our b, -3 here on the y-intercept, and our slope is 3, so we are going to go up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, or we are going to go down 3 to the left 1. So because our inequality symbol in this second inequality here is greater than, it does not have half of the equal sign underneath it, we are going to use a dash line. So we are going to use a dash line for this one, and we are going to connect our points using the dash line. The inequality symbol is greater than, meaning that you are going to shade above or to the right. We are going to shade above the line, or what we call to the right, and in order to do that, I'm going to the edge of the grid line, and I'm going to have this just like that. And you can write your inequalities here, which would be y is greater than 3x minus 3. So you have the overlapping taking place along this border here and this border right here, bordered by the blue and bordered by the orange. And in this overlapping shaded region, you would write S, and that S is signifying that you can find any solution in this overlapping shaded region. So you can choose any solution from the overlapping shaded region, and that would make the inequality true. And I'm going to choose -2, -3. So one solution, and you can write it here, one solution is -2, -3. Now, one thing I must say to you is that when you are dealing with system of linear inequalities, you can choose a solution that is on the solid line, but not a solution on the dashed line. Because on the dashed line is not telling you that you are going to include that point. When you choose a point on the solid line, you are stating that that point on the solid line will make that inequality true. And you can go ahead and you can test both inequalities, because as you know me, I like to test both inequalities. So for my solution, I had one solution which was -2, -3. And I'm going to test that in my system of linear inequalities. So I will write now that y is greater than 3x minus 3, and you're going to substitute your values for your variables. That's what you're going to do now. And so I'm going to substitute my -2 and my -3 there. So y is -3 and x is -2. So I will have -3 is greater than -6 minus 3, because you have here 3 times -2 is going to give you -6. -3 is greater than -9. And yes, this is true. So that is true, and so you can test it for the other one, and you can either use the inequality that we have changed into the slope-intercept form, or we can use the standard form 1. So let's use the slope-intercept form to test it. So we have our half here and we have our 2, and we are going to substitute our value that we have for the solution, and our y is -3 and our x is -2. So -3 less than or equal to -1, because you're going to reduce this, plus 2. So once we have that, we say -3 is less than or equal to 1. Now looking at this, is this true? Yes. This is true because -3 is indeed less than -1. Obviously it's not equal to, but it's less than or equal to. That is the inequality symbol right here. So this is what we have for the first one. I'm quite sure that you know me by now. I never give you one example. Variety is the spice of life, and I always give more than one example so you can compare and see what's going on and see it from a different perspective. So let's get right into the second example now. The next system of linear inequality that I am going to graph for you is y is greater than x plus 1 and y is less than or equal to x minus 3. So I'm going to graph that for you now. Same thing as the first one, you have to look at your inequality symbol and you notice that this is greater than. That means you are going to use a dashed line. And for this second inequality here, you are going to use a solid line. So you have to first identify all these things that you need to do. The next thing that you need to also do is understand where you're going to shade, and you're going to look at the inequality symbol. So because it is greater than, you are going to shade above, and because it is less than, you are going to shade below, or if you're shading below, you are going to shade below and also to the left, and if you're shading above, or to the right. Now the next thing that you need to identify is your slope. So for the first one, the slope here would be 1, because it's an invisible 1 in front of the x, but we just don't write it. And for this next one is the same thing. The slope is going to be 1. Now your b is going to be 1 here, and for this one, this is your b, which is -3. So once you are able to identify those 4 things, then you are ready to graph your system of linear inequalities. So let's get right into it. So let's start with the first linear inequality that you have right here. The b is 1, so you're going to look for 1 on the y-axis, and this is where you start. The slope is 1, so up 1 over 1 because it is a positive slope, or down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1. It is a dashed line, so we are going to create a dashed line for that. And once you create the dashed line, you can now shade, and it is shading above because it's greater than. If you are right-handed, and you can use your elbow here as a guide to tell you where to shade and what the inequality means. Because you are a right-handed person, this is your dominant hand that you write with. This is your greater than symbol, and it looks just like this with the V going away from your body to the right. So therefore, that means you're going to shade to the right, or you're going to shade above. So you can go ahead and you shade, and you go to the end of your grid paper. And you can go ahead also and write your inequality in the open area, and this inequality is y is greater than x plus 1. And for the next inequality that you have there, we are going to graph that one also, and we're going to start at the y-intercept, which is -3, And the slope is also positive 1, so up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, or down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1. You'll notice here that the inequality symbol is less than or equal to, meaning that it has half of the equal sign underneath that inequality. Therefore, you are going to use a solid line. So we must use a solid line when we are connecting our points. You will notice here that your inequality symbol is less than or equal to, meaning that you are going to shade below or to the left. If you are a right-handed person, that means this is your less dominant hand, and therefore this simply means that this is less than. Right-handed person, this is your dominant hand. This means that this is greater than. So you can use that to remind yourself. So you're going to shade below, and you go all the way to the end of the grid paper. Do not pass the line. And you can write your inequality here, which is y is less than or equals to x minus 3. Now, after you've done that, what do you notice? Looking at this, you can come to the conclusion that there is no overlapping shaded region because all the shaded region are going in the opposite direction. Therefore, this is a situation where you simply have no solution, because there is no point on this graph that is going to satisfy both inequalities. And another thing you'll notice here in this particular situation is the fact that the slope of both inequalities are the same, and because they are the same, you have a parallel line that is taking place on this graph. So that is another situation that you have occurring. And I spoke about the parallel line situation when we were doing system of equations, and you can go back and watch that video also. So those are the two system of linear inequalities that I wanted to highlight to you and show you the difference between having one solution and the difference between having no solution. I hope that this video has helped you tremendously, and now that you know how to graph system of linear inequalities, you will be successful when you're given any problem that deals with system of linear inequalities. Just remember, you have to remember when to shade above and when to shade below. You have to also remember when to use a solid line and when to use a dashed line. Thank you for watching, and please hit that subscribe button if you have not done so. Please also share, like my video, and leave a comment. Others around the world want to be successful in math. Let's share it all, and let's all be successful when we are given a problem that we don't understand. See you soon. Bye now. Cheers.